Well, I'm Darius Ferrigno. I left here in 1978, which seems like 1,000 years ago now. I had a lovely time here. I think at one stage I had a season ticket for detention. I did become a monitor, I remember that very well. I was secretary of the Debating Society for 3 years. I was in Wearings, played squash for the first team. We just had a lovely time, from little jokes to big jokes to what people would call japes to what I think the headmaster would probably expel me for even now, as you say, retrospectively. I think probably could do. Certainly could be arrested for some of the things. We just did so much, and that was the great thing. We had that opportunity to have a great time with one another. We had some of what I suspect was the best teaching in the country. Played sport to good effect. We had so many extracurricular activities. I know it wasn't everyone's cup of tea, but I thought the CCF was great fun as well. And I played one of the more unusual sports in later years, squash. I was given colours here. I went on to receive full colours at university for it. I think it was a foundation for some of the racket sports I got into a little bit later. And although I don't play as much as I should now, being far too tubby, it really was something super, and it was a start in so many things. Some of the happiest days of my life, definitely. Well, my friendship group, my closest friendship group, is still the chaps with whom I was at school, whom I see quite regularly, and no one has ever really come close. I think the friendships one forms at school are incredible. That's not to say I don't have marvellous friends from university, but here much more so. The teachers, I could name so many of them. I realise I have named a few already. Our headmaster at the time was Canon Luft. I think most people liked their headmaster. We thought he was incredible, if somewhat terrifying. And I certainly spent far too much time in his study, I do know that. So just a few there, but many masters had a great impact upon me, actually, particularly around my subjects, and even those that didn't necessarily have a great impact. We had a great time, and I think I can probably say that almost every single day here we spent our time laughing. We had such great fun, and I think people don't perhaps always understand that school, when they look back on it, really was quite a good number, if I may say so. And particularly here, we were terribly well looked after, and given what I think was a very traditional liberal education in the way teachers understand that and parents understand that. And that, for me, helped greatly, because I feel it was a very broad education. It taught us to look at both sides of the story, which certainly as a lawyer is very important indeed. Since then, I've certainly had a few hiccups along the way, but I'm an employment lawyer. I specialise in that. I do a few other little things, and I divide my time between what I think people would call normal employment law and writing some books. I also write quite a few products, so rather a specialisation in that, but I think that's the way things are going in law these days. I studied English, French and history. English I loved especially, and still do to this day, and I think that was very much down to my teachers, and I remember Mr. Price in particular. History I also loved, and again I follow to this day. Mr. Gambles and Mr. Smart were my favourite teachers for that. After school, I read a non-law degree to begin with, and then a law degree, and then some higher law degrees. And ultimately, I was called to the bar, which I suppose is more in keeping with sort of thing I like doing. I'm happier on my feet. But there is an awful lot of advice for that. But youngsters can follow a path of a law degree or a non-law degree, and it's much, much easier nowadays to do a non-law degree. Well, I think that the thing is to figure out what one is best at, what skills people have, because skills, perhaps strangely for someone who is at school, end up counting far more than knowledge in due course. I think it's always best probably to go to the highest ranked university for subject, or indeed more widely that one can get into. So I always tell youngsters to aspire. I think that is very, very important, but to do so many other things. And friendships are crucial, as are, of course, contacts in later life. And I think if people find something that they enjoy, go to the best university they can go to, many friends as possible, keep on networking all the time, then I'm sure those things will help. But obviously a question like that, I could sit here and answer for 8 hours. You could probably ask me for a 3,000 word essay or something and I wouldn't cover it sufficiently. The company was founded back in the early 14th century and has been a charitable organisation for as long as anyone can remember. And its main function nowadays is to provide help to people who are somewhat less fortunate than ourselves. And we are all fortunate to have been through a place like this. The company gives away something in the order of £1 million per annum to charity. It also provides assistance to the schools, and in particular our sister schools in Northwood, where it is very much involved, far less involved up here with the boys' school and the girls' school. The structure is that youngsters, so people leaving school now, can join as apprentices. I did not do that. I went in via redemption, which is a different type of entry, but that is certainly not something which would apply to the youngsters here. Someone has to propose them. They spend a number of years going through the process, and by and large they're invited to some wonderful drinks parties, some wonderful lunches, some wonderful dinners, and so long as they're doing their bit, everyone is very happy. For anyone thinking about going into the city or that area, then marvellous in terms of contacts and telling them what goes on in the city and helping with them, and that would include people going into law in the city as well. Well, I'm very grateful for everything the school did for me. That's in terms of the liberal education I mentioned earlier on, in terms of the friendships, the sport. So many of the things I do now were, I suppose I was introduced to them and they were nurtured whilst I was a schoolboy. And as I say, I still keep in touch with so many friends via the Old Boys Association. The Old Boys Association is very good at helping old boys, and as you know, we're trying to develop that even more. So for the youngsters, give them a taste of things they can become involved in, try to assist them in some way with their careers. And the other thing I suppose I should say, it is just very good fun. Some of the lunches and dinners we have are super, and there can't be many people who don't like going out for a nice meal and a few bottles of wine. Well, I was incredibly honoured to be made Junior Vice President. I look forward tremendously to becoming President of the Old Boys and to trying to prevail upon more old boys to come back to the school, to enjoy it for themselves and to support our youngsters and the merchant tailors community in general. The London dinner seems to have become established at the Travellers Club on Pall Mall. We have it in a truly wonderful room, one of the most beautiful rooms in the West End. The camaraderie is marvellous. Boys from all years come, so young, in the middle and old. We have wonderful food. There's a champagne reception for an hour, which the youngsters seem to enjoy particularly. All the wine is included. Nice speeches from the headmaster or his representative and others. It's a friendly evening out and people just have a most pleasant time of it, and we often stay until 2 or 3 in the morning. So just a night out having a few drinks with some friends.